Welcome to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm John Dykes, and today on the Tuesday Bulletin I'm joined by Lawrence Connolly and Natasha Meikle to talk about all things Celtic. Natasha, will we be talking about what we're not doing or what we actually are doing? Because on a day-to-day basis it's more about the transfers that are in the mix. We are in the race to sign X, Y and Z, but not a great deal seems to be happening at the moment.
There's very little happening on the surface anyway, so I think the conversation today is likely to more centre around what's not happening than what actually is happening. Perhaps I'm being too trusting and too optimistic to think that surely there is a hive of activity going on behind the scenes that we're just not seeing the fruits of yet. But what I would say to that is that we certainly have to start seeing it very soon. A lot of names are getting thrown around, and we can talk about that, whether they're the names that we are hoping that Celtic could be going for in this transfer market. Because what I'm seriously concerned about is, firstly, the lack of transfer activity, and secondly, the sort of players that we are bringing in and the sort of players that we are being linked with. It certainly seems that in terms of both who we've brought in terms of Urahidi and Shaw, young players, potential prospects, and look who we're being linked with. Abada, Soppy, Lowell, youth players, projects, they're all 19 years old. For me, I was hopeful that we were going to be entering this market looking for first team ready players who are going to come in and make a big impact. And instead, we're looking at projects. So that's a bit concerning. Not even that we're managing to get these prospects over the line, but the fact that we're not managing to get into the market for these impact first team players that we're crying out for.
It is a concern. I mean, I'm all for bringing young players to the club, developing them, and either they do a job for Celtic or we move them on and we make a profit, and everybody's happy with that because we've done that and we've played that market really well. But this season is completely different. I agree, we need the established first team ready players to come in to fill the voids that are undoubtedly all over the park now. And there's a bit of a concern, Lawrence, around the fact, and I was just chatting to Natasha about this before you came in, that we left it late with Ange Postecoglou getting a job. And we know what the backstory to the Eddie Howe deal, etc. was. We left it late. But at that point, if Celtic were then to have acted quickly and started to get the players in over the last 3 weeks or so, we would have been sitting here with a degree of confidence. Even though we've left it late, the players have come in really late, much later than we would have liked, we would have understood. Because I think that after the initial reaction to the Eddie Howe deal breaking down, Lawrence, we were given a bit of a boost. Even though when Ange Postecoglou came in, people had doubts about his pedigree, for example, something that he was asked about in his first conference. But then we were given that boost. But it seems to me, Lawrence, that that's kind of waned over the last couple of weeks due to the lack of activity. And I'm asking the question, with a week to go to the qualifier, have we actually given him an impossible task here?
Well, I think we get the boost because how quickly they carried out the business with Ange. It was done fairly quickly. And we seem to have stalled again, don't we? And, if we've got players in, we did a game or two to bed themselves in. Now if they come out, it's just the other invincibles to get themselves in against. We're definitely losing momentum. It felt as if we were getting some momentum, and now it feels like we're losing it again. We know Ange isn't involved in negotiating the transfers. He's said that. It begs the question, who is? Dom's in the door, officially 13 days with no head of recruitment. Is this the reason things aren't going over the line, or is Peter still giving us a hand on recruitment here? It's just bizarre, isn't it? And we can link with loads of players, but most of it just seems to be paper talk from what I can say. And you're like, there's no one that went brilliant. Yes, he's a first team starter. Get him in. Can't wait to play it.
Yeah, this is the thing. We could probably fill the Axon Bulletin on a daily basis with speculation, gossip, players who have been linked to the club. Natasha, we won't do that. I mean, we will speak about some speculation around players, and in particular, Liel Abada, who looks as though he is in the process of certainly discussing terms with Celtic. But We certainly won't be doing that on a daily basis, because 99% of the speculation turns out to be just that. It doesn't turn into a player that signs for Celtic. Now, there has also been some concerns raised that we've run out of recruitment ideas. Now, Lawrence has touched on it there. Maybe we're looking for a bit of assistance from the old guard and Peter Lawwell. Well, obviously, eagle-eyed Celtic fans are well aware that Abada's agent is none other than Dudu Dahan, who has been involved in a number of transfers over the years for Celtic. Where do you sit on that one? Because when you look at some of the players that have come in, when he's been involved in deals for players like Nir Bitton, for example, Ilhamid, Ambrose, the cult icon, Rami Gershon, who didn't play many games. He's been involved in a lot of these transfers, and he seems to have been, for a spell, the go-to agent. If you're looking for a player and there aren't many options, or none of them are fitting the bill, go to Dudu for a player. Does that concern you, or do you think, you know what, utilise him? If you can get a good signing out of him, utilise him. Where do you sit on that one?
I think the latter. If he is known for bringing some good players in, and he is assisting us, and it's someone that we then go on and scout ourselves, that the manager has the final say on, then there is no harm in using those sources. Hibs did it as well. They used him to get Marciano to Hibs, which is a great signing for them. But further back, Kayal to here. So he does uncover some of these sort of players, and if he's going to help us do that, then yes, utilise it, but only if we then do our own due diligence on them and Postecoglou gets the final say and it's a player that he wants to bring in. Looking at Abada, probably is the type of player that might fit Postecoglou's side. I don't know whether, at 19 years old, whether he is someone that we're signing as a first team player or as a prospect. Looking at some of his stats for last season, he played a lot of games, he scored 13 goals. His stats look good for someone of his age, but it takes us back to the debate of whether we are bringing him in as first team or as backup. I think he predominantly plays on the right wing, which is obviously where we expect to see Forrest. And then his backup is surely Dembele. So I don't know what that would say for Dembele if we're looking to bring another right winger in. So it's an interesting one. I think for me, the left wing is a bit more of a problem area that I'd like to be addressing, but maybe he plays both. But from what I understand, he is predominantly right-sided, which isn't really the position that we're crying out for at the moment. There are a lot of positions that we're crying out for. I'm not sure that's one of them. But like we've touched on, it is part of our business model to uncover these young players, develop them, and then sell them on for a profit. As long as we're supplementing that with first team players who are going to stay and commit to Celtic for a while, then fine, that's an okay business model. But for this signing, I don't know which category that's going to fall into.
Well, the thing with that particular signing target, Abada, I think he's an exciting prospect. If he was part of a group of players that are coming into the club, then I'd be all for it, and I'd be as excited as an ex-fan. My biggest concern, Lawrence Connolly, is the fact that the area of the park that we really need to be focusing on right now is at the back. I mean, we are very weak, I would suggest, on both sides of the defence, but also in the centre, and there's even a question mark over the goalkeeper. We'll come back to that in a moment. Surely we should be prioritising Lawrence, getting some defenders in for our qualifier in a week's time.
Well, I think we're going to still have Big Aya, and I'd play him at right back, but at centre half, yeah, we need a dominant centre half in, don't we? And the sooner the better. Aya doesn't, for what, 20 million, he might be here all season. We don't back what I thought was a fairly decent bid from Brentford, which would have been, 12 million up front, 3 million in add-ons. Surely that allowed us to source a right back and a centre half. At left back, I don't see us spending that. I think it's Montgomery and Taylor for the season. We've got Boy as well, left wing back. So we've got three options there, and I don't think we're going to buy a fourth left back. At right back, God love him, Tony Ralston. To set up another goal, but I just don't think he's the answer. And I'm not even too sure what the question is. If he is the answer, so it's we definitely need one or two right backs in, and we need a couple. I'd say first team starter, dominant centre half, and potentially another centre half in. There was rumours that Beaton was looking to get way back to Israel. He's kind of on one of those Rodgers era legacy contracts where he's on fairly decent wages, isn't he? And I'm sure Celtic would love to kind of cut another big hammer out But to do that, we'd need to bring in at least 2 centre halves. So, yeah, I can see Ajer at right back, but against Midtjylland, and Celtic might surprise us. We might have one of those days where we wake up and there's 3 guys with the new strips, triple unveiling.
Remember those days, Lawrence.
Yeah.
Remember those days, yes, absolutely. Now, you raised
who else was it?
Talking of which, that's interesting you brought that up. Well, Mike Galloway signed in the same pre-season as Jack Ioannowski and Paul Elliott. Rudy Vata was Stuart Slater and Andy Payton, and they were standing in the tunnel. But it's interesting you bring up Mike Galloway, right? I'm going to get stick for this, Natasha. I always do, because I've read it on Twitter that I think I'm a friend of the stars and all this carry on. Mike Galloway was on the text this morning. Now, he now lives down south. His career was cut tragically short because he was in a car crash, almost lost both his legs actually. He was in a coma for 6 weeks. And I stay in touch with Mikey, and hopefully we'll be chatting to him soon. And if we do, we will capture that and we'll put it out on Axon. But he asked me just to say hello to all the Celtic fans out there as well. So Mikey Galloway, if you're watching, I hope you're doing well. Mike, interesting that Lawrence brought that up because I hadn't mentioned it earlier on. But now, yes, I'll be pretending I'm a friend of the stars alongside Mark Hughes, etc. Now, Lawrence mentioned a couple of things there. The first thing I want to pick up on is the near Beaton situation, Natasha, where he is on a large salary. And it's a legacy contract that he's on. Obviously, Neil Lennon and now Postecoglou have inherited that situation. But I think they've inherited it with Tommy Rogic as well. And we've also got other players who are in a category whereby I think we've seen Olivier Ncham, who obviously went to Marseille on loan. He was speaking to AEK Athens. And I think some of these players will realise that the money they're on at Celtic, no other club, based on their performances over the last season or so, no other club are going to match those wages. Does that concern you that we're going to end up with players like Beaton, Rogic and Cham, and I'm not saying all 3 of them should be sold in any case, but we're going to be left with players simply because they're quite happy to run down their contracts because they're on big wages?
I think I'd probably put them all into slightly different categories. Looking at Ncham, he's definitely one who's come back with his tail between his legs, having worked out the grass is not greener on the other side, and that life at Celtic is not that bad after all, particularly when no one else wants you. It's a difficult one because there's obviously a player in there. He has quality. You just look at some of the massively important moments he's been involved in key games. Lazio comes to mind, some of his games against Rangers. But the problem with Ncham's always just been lack of effort, lack of interest. And that's something that's absolutely unforgivable from a fan's perspective. We just don't accept that from the club. We accept 110% effort and, maybe doesn't always match the ability, but we'll never, ever accept less than 100% effort, just regardless of the ability. For Celtic fans, we see it as a privilege to play for the club, and he hasn't treated it as such. I don't know if there's any way back for Ncham. We'd have to see 110% in every single game if we were to give him a second shot at this, any sort of redemption. And ultimately, I think it will come down to Postecoglou's call, and it could be dictated by the other options he has in that area. If he thinks that Cham can come back into the fold, give the sort of effort I think that Postecoglou would demand and fit into the team that he wants to play, then maybe we will see more of Cham. Rogic I see slightly differently. He has never been one that really seems to be looking to the door, looking for other options, wanting away from Celtic. He's one that's fitness has just never allowed him to have the sort of impact that we know he can, and the fits and starts we see him in are almost more frustrating because similarly to Ncham, there's ability there. There's so much ability. But for Rogic, I don't think it's through lack of effort, it's through lack of fitness. Maybe that's something that can be turned around for this season. We've not seen any signs that suggest that will be the case. But again, he's someone that Postecoglou knows, so he could be an integral part of his plans. And moving on to Nir Beaton, he seems to be the sort of player that's wheeled out for all these Champions League qualifiers when we don't have any other defenders. Let's bring Beaton back into the fold and make him a makeshift centre half again. And here we find ourselves in the position that exact situation could be occurring again, because in many aspects, which I'm sure we'll talk about further, Celtic just don't learn their lesson. So I would absolutely not be surprised to see Beaton starting in the defence against Midtjylland.
This is the frustration, because weeks ago, if not months ago, we had that conversation on here, and I seen Alan Morrison was joking about it on Twitter. We had the conversation that the back four was going to be Ralston, Taylor, Welsh and Beaton. Slightly tongue-in-cheek, but hopeful that it wouldn't have happened. And no disrespect, like Lawrence says, no disrespect to two players like Tony Ralston. I'm not going to have a dig at the boy, right? Because at the end of the day, he's been given a year's contract. He's here for a year. I think he's back up at best. We definitely need to get a right back in. But the speed in which, or the lack of speed in which we are getting these deals over the line, Lawrence, would suggest that is going to be the back line. If we're serious about progressing, I mean, I was speaking just after Ange Postecoglou was announced as a Celtic manager. And what I said is, you know, like most Celtic fans, I'm going to get behind the new gaffer. However, he's a £60 million gamble. That's what I said at the time. People thought that, you know, you were overreacting. But what I'm trying to say is, it was a massive gamble at the time. But if we got the players in the door over the last 3 weeks, then at least we would have a semblance of a chance of getting through. At this moment in time, I've got to say, with that as the backline, and that's my biggest concern, goalkeeper behind them also, I'm not that confident that we're going to go into a game against the Danish champions and we're going to come out on top. We've seen a couple of bounce games. Ange Postecoglou reckons that against Bristol City we will see the aforementioned Tom Rogic, because it's been a fitness issue, surprise surprise, that's meant he's not featured against Charlton or Sheffield Wednesday. He also suggests that Chris Ayer's going to be playing, but going into that game in 7 days time, I mean, had you said to us 3-4 years ago that we would be in this position, you would think surely not. I mean, it's not as though this has just come to light since Ange Postecoglou's taken over. We knew that Laxalt and John Joe Kenny would be going back to their parent clubs. We were not about to spend millions on Laxalt and give him 41 grand a week. That's what he's on now. That wasn't going to happen. We weren't going to go in with a massive financial package to bring Kenny to the club. And in actual fact, his performances didn't merit that anyway. So we knew a long time ago that we were going to be in this situation. So, I mean, when you're looking at it, Lawrence, and I'm saying, have we given Postecoglou an impossible task? All of a sudden, you've got a million experts in body language out there who are looking at Ange's demeanour on the sidelines all of a sudden, just like they did last season, looking at Kennedy and Neil Lennon, etc. Is it concerning you? Do you think that he has been made promises and he'll be looking at this game in 7 days' time thinking, you know, is this what it's going to be like? I mean, we've heard about this in the past, Lawrence, even as far back as Janssen. Janssen wanted to quit a month into the job. You know, we can't let history repeat itself like this.
Well, there was big concern if we changed the manager, we wouldn't change the structure. That was, I think, everyone's concern, and it would appear we'll change the manager and not change the structure. When it comes to deals, there's, you know, time kills deals. There's a reason you want it done quickly. It keeps momentum going, it builds trust in both sides, it stops people from nicking intake players. So if the manager identifies someone to get them quick, it says to the manager, we're trusting you, and it says to the player, we want you. What it says, you know, a few weeks in, delivering no targets, I'm not too sure. So it's a huge concern. You know, Ange is probably sitting there thinking, if Eddie Howe had come in, how many of his targets would have been delivered? Would he be sitting here saying, I need a centre-half and I need a right-back for the Champions League qualifier? Maybe knows what targets the board have set them though. Maybe they've said, listen, don't worry about Europe, we just want to win the league again this year. Maybe the board are writing off Europe. But they certainly don't seem to have learned anything from previous seasons or the previous way of operating, which is hugely concerning.
Apologies, or maybe I shouldn't apologise that my face disappeared from the screen for a few moments there to show you a big Axon Bumblebee kit. I was just double checking that all the cables were in place to make sure that the signal wasn't lost. That concerns me as well, Natasha. The board could possibly think that you could write off Europe, more so than ever. Even, you know, you're looking at the fact that as a football club you've got to be playing at the top level, you've got to be playing at that stage, but on a financial level, particularly after the last year, you can't just write Europe off, surely.
It's madness if that is any part of the game plan. We're very lucky to get a shot at getting into the Champions League this year, having finished second. This is a golden opportunity that we shouldn't have expected, because we finished second, and we've been given this opportunity, and it would be criminal not to make the most of it. And by going into the qualifiers as underprepared as we are not making the most of this opportunity. And what is frustrating is the length of time we have had to be prepared for these qualifiers. And it's something we've said time and time again. We go into these unprepared, but this season more than ever, we have known the scale of the task at hand before this qualifier came round. We've known from January, February, March how much work needed done before this date in July. And now we are a week away from it, and I see no signs of the vast majority of that work having been done. We look at the situation that you've touched on in terms of key areas, our fullbacks. We sold Frimpong. We then have Laxalt and Kenny on loan. We know that they are returning to their parent clubs at the end of the season, and that we've no realistic prospect of a backup. But we've known about that situation for months and months, and now we're a week away from the qualifier and we haven't addressed it. We can apply that to our centre-half positions as well. We made Ajer a promise. We agreed that he could stay for another year and then we would let him go this summer. And it would be terrible planning if we were to go back on that promise. But it's terrible planning that we've not managed to bring someone in to replace him yet. Mm-hmm. We have known since last summer that Ajer was going to leave this summer. We made him a promise that he could stay. We have to have been preparing over the last year for an Ajer replacement this summer, and that just hasn't happened. And the deals that are on the table for Ajer are seen good. We've made the guy a promise, and we need to let him go, and we need to honour that. We're talking about a player who said publicly that he's getting to leave this summer. It would look terrible if we then went back on that. And on top of that, he doesn't want to be here. We can't force him to stay for another year and then let him leave for free. That's not only bad business, it's bad management. And we've seen what happened last season by trying to force players to stay for an extra year who didn't want to be here. So for me, just sort of moving on slightly, it's time to let Ajer go. It's time to make good on that promise. The offer that's on the table seems relatively reasonable. We can't afford to be too greedy here. Take the money, let him go, wish him well in his future career, and use that money that we will make from him to sort the defensive issues that we have. Use that money to rebuild the defence. Buy a left back, buy a right back, buy another centre half. The fee we could get for Ajer could cover the majority of that. So it's time to do that. But no, that's wrong. It was time to do that months ago. Why we've not done that yet is beyond me, and it's beyond frustrating.
When I'm looking at the situation with Ajer, I do wonder if we are trying to play the market in terms of waiting to the point where there are clubs out there who are really looking to, the last few days of a transfer window, where they might be prepared to throw in a couple of extra £1 million, a lot of money to Celtic or any club in Scottish football. But if you're dealing with clubs down south, Natasha, it could well be that they up their bid to the 15 mark or what it might be even higher than that. But once that happens, it's too late. This is a problem, and we shouldn't be in a situation where we're waiting to the end of a transfer window and we're going into the Champions League qualifier with, as the Duda Bide says, Anthony Ralston at right back and Beaton at centre back. And what he does say, he's commenting on YouTube, welcome back to the show, you're a regular contributor. If we can't beat Cluj, Sparta, Ferencvaros or Copenhagen, then this tie was always going to be difficult. The lack of recruitment compounds this even further. Absolutely. In answer to the headline, is it an impossible task? David Bradley also says on YouTube, yes, impossible. We have Kakashi, 777, so many players linked but nothing happening. What's going on? The Urban Kulshi also coming in to say we have indeed. Look at the times when we had reasonable to good teams and we still went out. We are currently weaker than last season. I would tend to agree with that. Just a wee reminder, if you are watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. What we're doing over the next period, and it will last for a while, is we've got quite a lot of prizes that we're going to give away free of charge to people that tune in to a Celtic State of Mind or any of the other shows that we have on the channel, check us out on A State of Mind on the YouTube. Subscribe to that. That's all you need to do. And if you subscribe, you go into a prize draw. Currently, we have the Verve's Urban Hymns Platinum Disc for 2.1 million sales of the album, and a cracking album it was as well. It's a genuine presentation display. And obviously we'll get that out to you. Just subscribe. We've got loads of signed memorabilia, Celtic related, music related. It will keep us in prizes for about the next year, which is tremendous. And we might even throw in one of these jerseys that Russell Boyce was modelling earlier today. Look at that. It's an Axom set of hoops on the day that Celtic launched their brand new kit. The Adidas home jersey has been launched today. Let's have a wee chat about that for a moment or two. A wee diversion, Natasha. Like Lawrence, when I seen it, it gave me kind of memories of 1980s Umbro designs. I'm thinking 1985 Scottish Cup final, Lawrence, with the pinstripes around the hoops. What was your thought when you first seen it?
Yeah, that was it. It was kind of 83, 84, 85. I was thinking, I like the strip, you know. How hard is it to get green and white hoops looking good? You know, I'm always going to like the home strip. We won't follow, I don't think Celtic's ever going to follow some other person's business advice and get rid of that iconic design. But yeah, you know, definitely I think it's a cracking strip.
Interestingly enough, you're talking about getting rid of the iconic design. When we were with Nike, Natasha, you remember that Nike were the manufacturers behind changing Barcelona's famous stripes, vertical stripes, and they changed it. But really, if you think about it, it's sacrilegious to do such a thing. And they wanted, or there was discussions around actually scrapping the green and white hoops when Nike were manufacturing the jerseys. Unthinkable. Someone sent me a tremendous picture fairly recently when Celtic were in talks with Gola to manufacture Celtic jerseys back in the 1990s, and the prototype was not green and white hoops. It was more of a kind of mannequin. It was more of a Croatia design, you know, the checker design. So we've got to be thankful that Adidas haven't gone down any of those radical routes. Natasha, what's your thoughts? It's a big deal nowadays. I mean, back in the day, sometimes Celtic didn't even announce that they had a new kit. I mean, I've spoken to people who didn't know. Our form of communication was a Celtic View every Wednesday. And if a kit came out, sometimes it just appeared on the Saturday. And people didn't even know that it was being launched. It's big, big business nowadays. The home strip's the biggest seller. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, it's good. It's a nice green and white hooped Celtic top. You can't go too far wrong with that. I think for the fans, for me, the important question is who's going to be wearing it next season. I'd like a little bit more communication around that and a little less communication on how we can spend more money in the Celtic shop. But hopefully that will be coming. What is interesting is the sort of narrative that we're seeing around the kit launch. One club since 1888, unbroken hoops, unbroken history. There's obviously a couple of days ago we had that it's coming home as well in terms of the Celtic top. It's been used for a few cheap digs, can we call them that? I think that's slightly what they are. Is it the time for it? Is it the place for it? I'm not entirely sure that we're in a position of strength to be dishing out cheap digs. But hopefully we'll start to see some news on who's going to be wearing the tops, and I'll be more pleased at that.
Oh, definitely. And there is a wee frustration, I guess, and it's difficult for various areas of the club in a situation like this where we've got to launch this kit. It's part of the contract that we've got with Adidas. The fans are at a stage where we're getting very restless in terms of the lack of signings, Natasha. And there must be people at that club thinking, wow, we've got a kit to launch tomorrow and the fans aren't very happy and we're going to have to put this out there and there's no new signings. No, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to come to Lawrence, because it was actually Lawrence Connolly who introduced me to the gentleman that is Paul Sheridan of the Wakes. Lawrence, you'll remember you brought him through to the studio some time ago. Paul contributes to a fantastic show actually on A State of Mind's YouTube channel, all around football jerseys and the topical issues politically and musically and everything else around about those times. So check it out. But when I saw that neckline where it said says, "Our city, our colours." It instantly brought to mind the Wakes song Colours, which has the lyric, "This is our city and these are our colours." Is that something that sprung to your mind as well, Lawrence?
Do you think there's someone at Adidas that's got the Wakes albums? Perhaps.
Most probably, yeah.
But I'm with Natasha on it's not, for me it's not really the hoops really isn't for taking cheap digs. You know, it should just be green and white hoops. I don't see that any added value. I think it kind of detracts from it. But yeah, no, I mean, I like Paul, I like Wakes, I like the music, but do we want the slogans on the neckline of a Celtic jersey? You know, for me it's no. I don't think there should be any slogans there. You know, it should just be the hoops. It shouldn't be that hard. And you're saying there's maybe people in the club saying we've got a jersey to launch and there's no players. You know, the PR's been a bit better this season since Storm came in, but last season's PR, if it's the same people involved there, I wouldn't have thought they'd have thought that far ahead. They'd just get a jersey, just get it out, somebody will buy it. They wouldn't be too focused on whether we've signed new players, worrying that we've got a Champions League qualifier or not. Just get the emails out, put the link in, make sure they can pre-order. you know, forget if we qualify for Champions League, just get the pre-orders in.
Yeah, and yep.
I don't know, has anything really changed?
Well, I'll ask Natasha the question, because obviously all season last year, Natasha, we were talking about communication, engagement with fans, and at a time when it's so easy to engage with fans. I mean, we've got the ability and the technology to dial in, to get people into fans forums, to hold fan press conferences, and this is something that the club has been embracing this season, to be fair. As Lawrence says, it's maybe a new approach with the same figures behind the new approach, but I've got to say, and I'm not being a club lackey, I think it's improved this season. I do think that some people in certain departments have got an impossible task because they are trying to sell an idea or sell a product, and the fans are unhappy with other aspects of the club. But do you feel that it has improved, or certainly are we on the right path?
I certainly think we're on the right path, and I think that Mackay has recognised when he came in that one of his priorities had to be repairing and rebuilding the relationship between the club and the fans, because it was in a bad place after last season, and that wasn't helped by the lack of engagement, the lack of transparency, and those are two things that he appears to have come in and tried to address. Firstly, through things like the fans forum, that level of engagement received an overwhelmingly positive response from the fans, and then that mic'd up session, again something very, very easy to do. It wasn't groundbreaking in terms of the information we received, but that sort of transparency and that new idea about how to engage with people was very, very positive. And that 3-minute video, you know, it's all it was. I don't remember the last time I saw anything come out from Celtic in terms of content that produced such an overwhelmingly good response. Twitter, social media flooded with positive messages, people who were perhaps on the fence starting to buy in more to Postecoglou. Those things are so simple and so easy to do and garner such a great response. So I'm encouraged by what Mackay's bringing. I'm encouraged by these new ideas and encouraged by the sort of output that we're starting to see from the club. Of course, it only goes so far. These videos, the content, the engagement is great, but what's really going to get the fans back on board is the results. So it's massively important that we marry up the positive engagement with positive results on the pitch.
Now, there's a few people coming in saying there's more things to discuss, more important points to discuss than football jerseys, Natasha. However, on a Celtic State of Mind, we will talk about everything Celtic related. Now, Feed the Bear comes in to say, I like the new green away top. Got to agree with that. We've already had a discussion around the white, pink and green one. Not sure how that's going down amongst the Celtic support. But the other one, Joy Division, it's not a shameless plug, talking about jerseys. Are you nearly finished your book? It's been finished for a while, but every single time it's finished, a new jersey comes out. So we need to add another couple of pages. But all joking aside, yes, autumn release for that one. and I'm sure I'll keep you posted on here. But when we're talking about Celtic jerseys and them not shrinking to fit inferior players, Lawrence Connolly, I think we're all on the same page that we would much rather be talking about new Celtic players coming in the door. I had this thought the other day there that the more Barkas plays, the more Ajeti scores, and the more Encham talks up the fact that he's back to win his jersey back, the more I'm thinking to myself, will the board actually look at that situation and think, well, we've now got, that's us got a £5 million goalie, a £5 million striker and a £4.5 million midfielder. I mean, there's no way that kind of narrative will be sold to the Celtic support. But how much are we actually trying to squeeze out of this squad? Are we looking at some of these guys who, you know, last season wouldn't have been anywhere near Celtic Park as possibly being a part, you know, playing a part this season, in particular in Cham, who I don't think anyone would have been saddened to hear of his departure to either Marseille or AEK Athens?
The main problem is that all those players you mentioned don't play right back or centre half. So, you know, even if they are, we're going to sort the problem, are we? And let's it'd be foolish for Ange not to get the best out of the squad that he's got in front of him. You know, and whether that's previous transfers that haven't seemed to work, or the big names ego players getting them back on side, or promoting from the youth, brilliant. But we've got problems at right back and centre half. You know, and boy, come on. Actually, the player I thought it struck when you mentioned the green strip is we could do with a Roy type player. We could do it with the bear back, couldn't we? Somewhere in that mould at centre half that can dominate, drive a team on. But it's not hard. Celtic, we've known for a while we need a centre half and a right back. Lenny identified at the beginning of last season as positions we need filled. Mm-hmm. We've had a disastrous season, going through all the season needing it filled. We're about to kick off another season, still needing the positions filled. It's, you know, it's beyond negligent. You know, you play the whole season knowing that you need those two, and we're going to kick off another season knowing we need a centre half and a right back. It's mind-boggling to actually be in this position, because it's more or less where we were last season. Ange said, listen, we're short at right back, centre half and wingers. Beginning of last season, when I said we need wingers, right back and centre half, you know, it's like Groundhog Day. All right, we've got a Champions League qualifier coming up. Will we sign them before or after? Who knows?
I know. But see, on that point though, Lawrence mentions, Natasha, and I know this might have been, in fact, this would have been before your time, Roy Aitken, right? So when I start watching Celtic in person in 1987, Aitken is a staple part of that team. He captains the side during the centenary season. And he's a driving force. I find it incredible looking back that he was only 28 at the time when you look at the pictures of Aitken, but he had been in the team since he was 16. And this is what, you know, it's part of the problem. He was someone who had been part of a process at Celtic where he was bedded in it as a young player. He was brought in, he played more games. He played a big part when Celtic won the league with 10 men in 1979. By the time the centenary year comes over, he's a staple part of the squad. Yeah, we do have some accomplished players in there who have been there for a while, but I just feel that the planning, it hasn't just been last season or the season before. I think it's been poor planning over a period of time. Now, there's a point coming through, I'm going to bring it up, and I'm not criticising the poster who is commenting on YouTube, but I think it's an entirely valid point here. That is a biscuit tin on your avatar though, Brenda's. So Brenda's empty biscuit tin. Buy more taps, support the board. The reason I'm bringing it up is obviously there is a narrative, Natasha, around stopping the purchase of merchandise to have a say obviously in the running of Celtic Football Club because you are denying them of further revenue. It's not something I buy into, I've got to say, because it's damaging to the club. And I know that there's people out there who will think, once again, that that's a club narrative and you're told to say that. Not at all. I just think that, you know, kit sales, and I've done a lot of research on jerseys over the years, are massive to Celtic's income in terms of revenue for merchandise, particularly the home jersey. It's one of the biggest selling jerseys in Europe. There was a time where it was the biggest selling jersey in Britain, in British football. I don't think we're anywhere near that now when you think of some of the brands down south that weren't anywhere near the top sellers 30, 40 years ago, Natasha. But where do you sit with that? Because that doesn't sit right with me, you know, denying the club of income, because without the income, how can we complain about investing in the team?
Yeah, I'll always support Celtic Football Club, and that is an issue that we could speak for hours and hours and hours on, whether we are denying the club by not buying merchandise, whether we're trying to force change by not buying merchandise, is a topic that could take up this whole show and the weeks of the shows. For me, I'll always support the club. I understand both positions. I think it's something that people do at their discretion. I don't buy into dictating whether Celtic fans should buy jerseys or not. But I have. I'm happy to admit that I have been on the pre-order. I've bought the away kit, and I do it every year, and I'll continue to do it every year. If that is naive and playing into the board's hands, then it is what it is. It's not something that I'm going to change.
I think there's an issue, for example, if you've got a couple of kids who are being introduced into the ways of being a Celtic supporter, and they want to buy something, they want to go to the Celtic Superstore, they want to have the new kit for their holidays. I think it would be particularly difficult, Lawrence, to say that actually you're not going to get that because we're being told from certain groups not to buy merchandise.
Yeah, definitely. Listen, it's not like the early 90s when the original boycott came into force change with the old board. I don't see the two situations being anything like it, and I think it'd be folly to actually starve the club of income at this point, especially when we're trying to recover from the effects of COVID, which is going to have affected all clubs. Yeah, telling the wee kid, you're not getting it because we're not happy with the board. It's maybe the same guys that say that it should be more than 20 quid to get into a football match. Well, and at the same time calling for new players. We're not going to give you any money, but go out and buy new players with the money we haven't given you. It's a bit of an incoherent strategy for me. It's kind of going, well, I'm not giving you money because you're not spending it. Well, if you don't give me it, I won't have it to spend. I don't know where it goes. So for me, I buy them if I like them. Well, because it's Celtic, I buy them even if I don't like them. But that's just me. So
you also get freebies, don't you, Lawrence, when you go in for a pie eating competition? Is that right? Mate, believe it or not, it was only the pies that were free. That jersey had to be paid for. So no, there was no free jerseys. I think Fergus stopped all the free jerseys. If you remember, they even charged Cadetti for his one he threw into the crowd. Andy Walker got charged. So did you actually go into the shop and get Pie Man on the back of the jersey? Pie Eater, yeah, right.
Pie Eater 03, yeah. 2003 that was.
Oh, superb.
Mate, the pre-pie eating training was amazing. 2 weeks of eating Iceland pies for every meal.
Lawrence, it's an incredible experience, I'm
Dedication,
sure.
Mate. Dedication.
Absolutely. I'm going to come to yourself, Natasha. There has been talk, obviously, of getting fans back into stadiums. We've watched the Euros. We've seen what has been done. There was an interesting picture of some of the dignitaries at Wembley sitting next to, FIFA's president, who I think had been in Brazil just a day earlier. So, COVID rules for some, but not others. 2,000 at the Preston game for a capacity of 60,000. Apparently, there's going to be some more information coming through this afternoon in relation to whether or not Celtic fans will be able to go to the qualifier and in how many numbers. How important is that going to be this season? Because I've heard the point made that it affected Celtic more. Do you buy that? The fact that we didn't have fans last season?
I think it affects all clubs the same, doesn't it? I think it's a bit of an excuse from Celtic at the time to say that we were affected more than any other club by COVID and the lack of fans. I mean, I imagine every club would say that about their club and about their supporters. It's trying to buy into that mindset of the fans, telling us how important we are, how much they need us, etc., etc. And I do think that Celtic were affected by the lack of fans. How long would the situation under Neil Lennon have continued had fans been in the stadium? Would we have managed to drive the team over the line in more games? We'll never know, but I certainly think that it's a possibility. So it's massively important, not just to Celtic, but to every club, that we get our fans back and make football the spectacle that we all love. It's very frustrating as a football fan to see some of the other events that go ahead. You just have to look at the capacity or the numbers in the crowd we saw for the game at Murrayfield when it was the rugby, and then you look at Tynecastle, over the road allowed 600 fans compared to the thousands and thousands that were allowed into Murrayfields for rugby. I don't understand the logic behind that. If someone can tell me what it is, then please do, because otherwise it just comes across a bit prejudicial towards football fans. And then we look at the scenes we saw at Wembley with the crowd there. Again, an explanation as to why that can happen down there and we can't have a bigger crowd than 2,000 at Celtic Park. I don't understand that logic, and it just becomes more and more frustrating from the fans' point of view to see these other events going ahead when we are all desperate to get back into Celtic Park. And I'm absolutely delighted for the 2,000 that will be there. I hope they have an incredible experience getting back into Celtic Park, and just hope that more and more numbers can be there for the qualifier and for the games after that.
One of the big things I would say is that like Natasha says, everybody's affected by the fact that there's no fans there, Lawrence. But I think one thing that did happen last season is that that influence, or the fact that Celtic fans were unhappy from a very early stage of the season, it felt sometimes as though we were just shouting into an empty vessel on this podcast, because, although, on one particular day, on a Celtic State of Mind across all platforms, there were 97,000 people tuning in on one day. So Celtic fans were, aggravated, they were annoyed, they were frustrated, but it almost felt as though all you could do is obviously enter what sometimes felt like an echo chamber, because no one was listening, Lawrence. And Jason Groves makes the point, when the fans do get back in, the board will hear us. And that is one point that I think we could make. If we were in the stadium last season, then we certainly would have made our feelings known early doors. And I don't think they would have had the option to leave it as long as they did. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, possible. Listen, Celtic Park, it's often a cathartic experience, going out there and kind of get rid of frustrations, and perhaps that's where pressure and frustration built up throughout the season. We can't kind of have it both ways and say, look, we get visiting players come and say, no, they're the best fans in the world, best atmosphere. But that's brilliant, nothing better than Celtic Park. The atmosphere's great for the fans, and then to say, well, it didn't affect us more. Well, if we've got something that's the best and you lose something that's the best, does it affect you lose something that's kind of middle of the road? I would say there is an argument for that. But getting fans in, what football fans are definitely treated as second-class citizens. I think it started after 1980 Cup final. Maybe Don Mackay will find out when it comes to raising some revenue. In fact, ask why we can't sell alcohol throughout matches, etc. like at rugby. But if it's a health issue purely, Natasha's right. Just look at Murrayfield. How can you justify it on health grounds? So you must be justifying something other than health grounds. And just be honest with us, I know we're asking a politician to be honest, which maybe goes against the grain for them, but tell us what it is. Just and if it's genuine, you don't think we can trust football fans, just say that. Or, just be honest and say, look, this is what it is. Why we're not allowing it.
I think Natasha makes the point, and it's being echoed by Drew Mack. It doesn't make sense, but football fans in Scotland, it always seems as though they're treated differently. Now, I think Lawrence brought up the 1980 Cup final, which obviously resulted in the alcohol ban at the football. You then had a situation with the government throughout the 1980s looking at football fans as second-class citizens and treating them just as badly. And that actually fed into the disaster that happened at the tail end of the decade as well, Natasha. So there does seem to be a view all these years later that is affected by these incredible views of football fans. I could go to Murrayfield and I'm the same person that I would be if I went to Hampden Park, yet I'd be treated completely differently, which is astonishing. And hopefully with Dominic Mackay's experience of both sports, the experience that he's now gaining in Scottish football, that he'll be able to break down barriers, I would hope. One other thing I would say, we've spoken quite a bit about transfers. I said the other week there, are we waiting to sell Eddie and Ayer before we buy? Is that still a concern for you, Natasha? I've seen a lot of people on social media saying, but look at the players that we've sold. Even as far back as Frimpong, we've sold El Hamid. We've got a lot of big earners off the wage bill. We've sold Klamala, we've sold Bio. These people have gone for transfer fees, yet we're not reinvesting. And I get that when a transfer fee comes in, particularly over the last year, it's not ring-fenced for transfers. It's fed back into the club, as is everything. But with all those sales and very little outlay, I'm starting to wonder if we are waiting for the big sales before we invest.
I think so. I think there's certainly a risk there, and you've touched on it. When was the last time we properly reinvested in the squad? It was probably Edouard. It's probably when we actually put 9 million out for him. But other than that, look at some of the players that have went for big fees. Let's go as far back as Van Dijk, and then Tierney, Armstrong, the money we got for Rodgers. Not much of that got reinvested back into the squad. So if we are waiting to sell Ajer and Edouard, how much of that are we actually going to see back on the pitch? If we do sell both of them for the fees that are being discussed, that's a significant pot you've got there to really rebuild the squad. And if you'd asked me a couple of months ago if the plan would be to sell Ajer, sell Edouard, sell Christie, that's a large pot of money we're talking about. Reinvest that to rebuild the squad and have a new look, revitalised Celtic team to start this season. That's what I expected to happen a couple of months ago, maybe longer, that process started. It hasn't, and I just don't understand why. Why haven't Ajer and Edouard been moved on yet? Is it because we want to keep them for the qualifiers? Is it because there's not an offer on the table that we deem acceptable? Is it because we've no replacements lined up? What is the reason? I don't know. I hope it becomes apparent. I really do not, and still do not expect to see either of them here by the time the first league game gets played. But we're really running out of time to find their replacements, if that's true.
When you look at some of the players, and this goes back to the original point made by Lawrence, if you look at some of the players we've been linked to and you think, I think of all the players' names that I've seen, Starfelt is the guy that you thought you could bring him in and he would play. He's a first-team ready player, Lawrence. But obviously with that, and by dragging your heels, what you'll find is that other clubs all over European football will be interested in quality of that nature. So you've got to get the deal done quickly. There was a Celtic State of Mind episode some time ago with myself and Kevin Graham, whereby, and this was a while ago, I suggested that Chris Ajer was going to become a £10 million player. Now, that suggestion would start an argument just in our WhatsApp group, never mind on a Celtic State of Mind. And I get that people don't rate him as highly as that. With regards to that, if we were to hold out, Lawrence, and get, let's say, in the region of 15 million, because the offer rather that you were talking about from Brentford was a £15 million offer, but it wasn't all up front, is that right? It was 12 up front. Yeah. So if we get 15 million, the problem is, what you would hope to do is go out and buy 3 players of the kind of level of Starfelt, for example. But it doesn't look as though that is Celtic's policy at the moment. We seem to be looking for these 19, 20, 21-year-olds, some of whom will command a big transfer fee, but others that, you're just thinking look like project signings. So even if we were to sell some of the big names for big fees, are you confident that this board would go out and invest appropriately in the players that we require for this team to make it better?
If the board have been prudent before, I think they're going to be even more prudent in the coming season. We don't know when fans are getting back in, so that's a main income stream. I don't think we're going to tie ourselves down to big money in terms of wages, not so much transfer fees, 4 or 5 year contracts. We've got already a number of big earners. There's talk about, Beaton's another one that's on big money. I think they're looking to get rid of people that are on big money and rebalance the wage bill, especially when there's uncertainty and the government's not telling us or treating us differently from rugby. We don't know how many fans are going to get in. We don't know how much income we can generate. So can you commit to a 5 year contract or a 4 year contract of a level? I don't think the board would be willing to take that gamble, shall we say, or that risk. And it's about getting players that aren't going to expect big wages. And I think kind of 10 grand is going to be our top level of anyone they bring in, 10 grand a week. And that'd be kind of right at the top if we brought somebody in. Not doing it quickly, mate. What does it say to prospective player that comes in? Well, Celtic are interested in you. Guys probably a bit excited. month later, Celtic's still interested. And he's like, yeah, I've been hearing that for days. you know, he's going to get annoyed eventually, isn't he? Remember the Willow Flood saga, signing him? He even came out publicly and stated as how long it was taking. Mm-hmm. You know, he pointed out he'd get family, it was affecting him. It's going to happen to players if we drag it on for weeks and weeks. Other clubs will nip in, or players themselves will go, well, actually do they, won't they? I'm just actually fed up with this. I just want to behave like a normal football club. Come in. What buy somebody, get negotiations done in a week.
We all know the players that have been at Lennox Town and it's not gone over the line, and it's frustrating to see how some of them actually go on and carve out a phenomenal career for themselves. Now, Lawrence, we're playing Bristol City tomorrow night. The one player that springs to mind, in fact, I'll ask you the question, a player that played with Celtic in Bristol City, what's the first player that springs to your mind?
I don't know, did Kyle do it? I don't know.
Jackie Jakanowski.
Jackie? Oh,
Darius Jakanowski.
Is that who Brady sold him to?
That's where he went. He went to Bristol City. Now, Jackie, Natasha, for yourself and others watching who might not have been a child of the 70s or the 80s, was your typical cult icon. He was a player with bags of talent. He had played at the 1986 World Cup for Poland. He was a man about town, Lawrence, but he picked and chose when he wanted to be that player. So in amongst the moments of magic were sometimes months of absolute nothing, not even appearances. He was a bit of a playboy, was Jackie Jakanowski, but when he was good, he was outstanding. But as I say, we're playing Bristol City tomorrow night. It's the third game of our pre-season. Natasha, what has the last couple of games told us about where Celtic are under Ange Postecoglou?
I think it's told us that we are going to see a bit of confidence placed in players like Barkas and Ageti. I think they're going to be players who Postecoglou has decided will do the job. Obviously, you know, the goalkeeping situation has been one that has been regularly discussed, and these pre-season games have been a chance for Postecoglou to assess Barkas really and decide whether he can be his number one goalkeeper. And I think what we've learned from the pre-season games so far, and we'll probably learn more tomorrow night as well, is whether Barkas is going to be his number one. I think that is going to be the case. We read earlier in the week Matt Ryan, who has been linked with Celtic for a while now, someone Postecoglou knows very well, being in the Australia squad. Matt Ryan effectively said, come and get me, Celtic. You know, when in that interview he made it sound like he was very, very keen on coming to Celtic. The option was there, was it Celtic or Sociedad? From the interview earlier in the week, he suggested that his preferred option was going to be Celtic. Now, we've seen yesterday that he went to Sociedad. I think if Postecoglou hadn't been keen on Barkas, he would have said to Matt Ryan, come and join me at Celtic, and Matt Ryan would have said yes. So the fact that Matt Ryan yesterday has decided to go to Sociedad suggests that Postecoglou has said to him, I don't need a new goalkeeper, and that Barkas is going to be his number one. And I think that's something we have to get on board with. You know, the pre-season games, I know they're pre-season. He's looked all right. He's certainly playing very high up the pitch. Signs of confidence, signs of where Postecoglou wants him to play. And I think we will see Barkas as the number one next season. And similarly, Ageti, we've learned that Postecoglou's placed a good bit of confidence in him, obviously made him captain in that first game. And he's looked good as well. He's looked faster, he's looked fitter, he's looked hungrier. There's a lot more momentum from him there as well, and it's encouraging to see. Another goal tomorrow night would certainly go a long way to his confidence too, so I hope we see that. So I think for me the two key things that we've seen from that are the rejuvenation, if you like, of Barkas and Ageti, who I think will both go into to play regularly for Celtic next season.
Yeah, it does look that way, Natasha, and you're right there in relation to the Ryan deal. As you say, if it was a come and get me plea and Postecoglou made it known that he wanted him, it could have been done, it seems. Lawrence, if you're looking at the two new boys coming in from Sheffield Wednesday, I know we've not seen much of Urhoghide. Have you been impressed by Shaw? I think Shaw's looked pretty good in the minutes I've seen him in. Yeah,
he's looked good. Big bit of a unit, tenacious, actually really good feet. Yeah, he's looked a player. Urhoghide, he looked a bit ropey, to be honest, but you know, we haven't seen much of him. he's not been in the building long. It's pre-season, so hopefully more to come from them. But in pre-season in general, I've probably been more impressed with the younger players than the more established players. Like, for example, Cham. They seem to be following, if Ange Mike Top was a blueprint, take a touch, move it, take a touch, move it. The younger players seem to take that right on board. 100% effort all the time, chasing it down, closing. The more established players seem to be the ones taking more touches on the ball and, taking their time with it, maybe not following the manager's instructions to a T. But I know it's only pre-season, but Montgomery was really good, Moffat. Murray, centre-half, looked okay as well. And obviously Leo Held, as you know, I'm a big fan of him. There's definite positive signs there. But Shaw looked really good, I thought.
No, I think, to be fair to you, Lawrence, and I'll bring it up as often as possible, you did give a very early shout on the Leo Held front, where you called him a first-teamer, and I think I probably scoffed at it when you said that. But from what I've seen, he looks very accomplished. But, Natasha, is this the season that we finally see Dembele coming to the fore?
Well, not if we're going to be signing a bad, perhaps, another winger who plays in that position, another young prospect coming through. I'd love to see more of Dembele. It certainly looks like he is bulked up, that he's ready to try and play first team football. Whether he'll get that opportunity or not, I don't know. I think if we do go ahead and sign this other winger, I think that's a suggestion that we won't be seeing much of Dembele. I think I'd like to see more of him. I'd like to see him play. Has he shown anything yet that solidifies his position as a first team player? I'm not sure. He is spoken about as having so much potential, like one of these players who's on the radar of everyone in Europe, and massive asset, someone we must keep hold of. We're yet to see too much from him, but I accept that perhaps he's not getting that opportunity. On the same vein, Lennon, Kennedy, Strachan, now Postecoglou, see him every day. So they know what he's all about. They know what he's got. If Postecoglou now goes out and signs another winger, that suggests his views on him, but I certainly like to see more of him.
No, I think if the winger in question was a left-sided player, we'd be much more excited, Natasha, because you look at Forrest and Dembele on the right. Obviously, Shved is out of the picture, offload him, Mikey on the left. So, it seems as though it would offer better balance if he was a left-sided player. I'm going to leave everybody with the thought for tomorrow night of Jackie Jakanowski. Now, for any Celtic fans who are not of the same vintage as Lawrence and I, try and dig out that memorable performance against Partizan Belgrade. Lawrence, where he scores 4 goals, we still go out in away goals. There's a goal he scores against Hibs, which is a scissor kick, unbelievable. There was also a goal, I'm not sure if it was televised, in a friendly game against Moscow Dynamo, I'm sure it was, at Celtic Park, which was unbelievable, but I'm not sure if the TV cameras were there. And he scores an outstanding goal in the FA Cup for Bristol City as well. So dig them out. There's also a moment where Jim White doorsteps him with a birthday cake, and I think that was on Scott Sport. I'm not sure if that's on YouTube, but have a look at some of his finest moments. Jackie Jakanowski, a celebration of the cult icon. It's been tremendous catching up with you all again on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. As I said before, subscribe on YouTube and you will go into a monthly draw to win big prizes. It's free to enter, as is all the content, free of charge. All that's left for me to say, Lawrence Connolly, Natasha Meikle, thank you once again for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.